The Galactic Council had ruled the Orion Arm for millennia. Their laws were absolute. Their fleets were invincible. And when they declared that a species was to be eradicated, it was simply a matter of time before the execution was carried out. Earth was supposed to be no different. The official declaration came in the form of a massive holographic transmission. Thousands of alien leaders, representatives of the Seraph Dominion, the Fraxis Swarm, the Elteri Consensus, and dozens more, stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council's central world. Their leader, High Chancellor Ovrak Thun, delivered the decree with an air of finality. Humans of Earth, your reckless expansion, your defiance of galactic law, and your primitive warlike nature have been deemed an existential threat. The Council has voted unanimously. You will be purged. Your worlds will burn. Your species will be erased from history. The message was transmitted across every known star system, meant to strike fear into humanity, to force them into surrender before the fleets even arrived. Instead, it was met with laughter. The United Earth government had been waiting for this moment. The president, Elias Carter, stood before the cameras, his expression unreadable. Behind him, the military leaders of Earth, Luna, and Mars stood at attention. Every person watching across human space held their breath. Carter leaned forward, placed both hands on the podium, and smirked. To the esteemed Galactic Council, let me make one thing clear. You are not the executioners. You are the condemned. He straightened, his voice turning ice cold. Come and try. Then, in a move that sent shockwaves across the galactic network, the humans did something unprecedented. They cut the Council's transmission mid-sentence. It was the equivalent of slapping an emperor in the face during his own coronation. The Council was outraged. The reaction was swift. Within hours, the extermination fleet minus 10,000 ships strong was launched toward Sol. This was not just a military operation. It was meant to be a spectacle. The Council wanted the destruction of Earth to be a warning for all species that might dare resist their rule. The best strategists, the most advanced warships, and the deadliest weapons of the galaxy's greatest empires were assembled for the mission. It was supposed to be an execution. Instead, it became the greatest disaster in galactic history. As the Armada crossed into the outer edges of the Sol system, something strange happened. Ships began disappearing. Entire battalions lost contact. Admirals shouted orders, demanding reports, but their commands were met with silence. Then, a chilling realization dawned upon them. Humanity had been preparing for this. The first ship to detect the anomaly managed to send out a fragmented distress signal before being torn apart by an unseen force. The Galactic Purge had begun. Admiral Xar Kul of the Zavani Imperium stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, Dominion's Wrath, watching the holographic display of the fleet's advance into the Sol system. Thousands of warships, each bristling with enough firepower to crack planets, moved in perfect formation. He had commanded purges before. This was no different. Humanity will be nothing but dust within the hour, he muttered. But something felt wrong. They had expected a panicked response, fleeing civilian ships, desperate distress signals, maybe even a last pathetic attempt at resistance. But the Sol system was silent. No hails, no movement, not even a single Earth vessel meeting them in battle. "Sir," one of his officers reported, unease in her voice, "we're detecting strange gravitational fluctuations around Neptune's orbit. Our sensors are getting scrambled." Zarkul narrowed his eyes. "It's just human incompetence. Keep advancing." The fleet moved past Neptune, approaching Saturn's orbit, when the first ship vanished. Not exploded, not disabled. Vanished. One moment, the Vraxis Hive battleship Kroloth was in formation. The next, it was gone from every sensor. No wreckage, no energy spike, just erased. What the hell just happened? Xar Kul demanded. Panic rippled through the fleet as another ship vanished. Then another, and another. Screams filled the comms as officers reported bizarre malfunctions, navigation systems turning against them, artificial gravity fluctuating, weapons discharging on their own. Some captains reported seeing Earth ships in the distance, but when they turned to fire, the vessels weren't there. And then, the killing began. From the shadows of Saturn's rings, the first Terran warships emerge. Not the crude, outdated vessels the Council believed humans still used. These were ghosts, stealth corvettes, hulls blackened with non-reflective coatings, flickered in and out of visibility. They moved with inhuman precision, AI-driven, faster than anything in the Council's arsenal. Their weapons were silent. No energy beams, no bright plasma blasts, only hypervelocity slugs, fired from railguns with such force that they punched through entire capital ships, one after another. The Council's warships, designed for traditional fleet engagements, were helpless. Their targeting systems couldn't lock on. Their shields, tuned for plasma and laser weaponry, meant nothing against solid kinetic rounds traveling at near-light speed. Panic turned into slaughter. We're under attack. They're everywhere. I can't see them. They're right on top of us. Shields are useless. We're silence. Another ship was gone. Then, without warning, the entire fleet's communications collapsed. Every Council warship suddenly went dark. Their systems hacked, their AI overridden. Fleet coordination disintegrated. Some ships turned against each other, their own weapons firing on friendly vessels. Others lost power completely, drifting helplessly. Admiral Xarkol felt a cold realization sink into his bones. This wasn't a battle. It was an ambush, and humanity had been planning it for decades. Admiral Xarkol's hands trembled as he gripped the console in front of him. His entire fleet, the greatest armada ever assembled against a single species, was being systematically erased. The humans had turned the Sol system into a death trap, and now the slaughter was in full force. "Find me a target. Return fire," he roared. His officers scrambled, trying to get a lock on the elusive Terran warships. But every time their sensors picked up movement, the ships vanished again. A dozen alien destroyers desperately launched plasma volleys into the void, trying to hit anything. The energy bolts sailed harmlessly through space. The humans weren't where they appeared to be. Then the counterattack intensified. From the asteroid belt, hidden Gauss platforms came online. They weren't standard orbital defenses. These were planet killers, railguns capable of firing tungsten rods at near-relativistic speeds. The first shot sliced through 5 Council warships in a single instant, cutting them in half like paper. The second shot tore through the Dominion's Wrath, Xarkol's personal flagship. The bridge exploded in flames, body sent flying as hull integrity failed. The Admiral, bleeding and gasping, managed to activate an emergency distress signal before his ship was torn apart. The humans weren't fighting for survival. They were fighting for extermination. The fall of the Armada. Across the battlefield, human warships revealed themselves. They weren't crude, outdated vessels. These were the pinnacle of warfare. They moved with inhuman precision, their eye-controlled targeting systems predicting every alien movement before it even happened. Terran drone swarms filled the void, each the size of a fighter, self-replicating and carrying payloads designed to cripple capital ships. They tore into the Council fleet like a mechanical plague, slipping past shields and detonating inside enemy vessels. Alien officers screamed as their ships were hacked mid-battle, their life support systems shut down, their gravity wells collapsed. Council soldiers found themselves floating helplessly, suffocating in zero gravity as Terran infantry breached their hulls and executed survivors. Some warships tried to retreat, activating emergency FTL drives. They never made it. Earth had prepared for that too. From deep space black sites, Terran interdictors activated. These weren't just gravity wells. They disrupted the very fabric of space-time, forcing ships out of hyperspace into preset kill zones. Every escaping ship found itself ripped out of FTL, directly into the sights of waiting Terran battlecruisers. And then, in an act of calculated cruelty, Earth transmitted one final message across all open frequencies. A simple three-word declaration. No mercy given. The alien fleet was no more. Of the 10,000 warships that entered Sol, none survived. A war already won. The Battle of Sol should have been a war-ending loss for humanity. Instead, it was a one-sided massacre. The Galactic Council had miscalculated. And now, humanity was ready to take the fight to them. The Galactic Council had always believed itself untouchable. Across the stars, it had enforced its will with overwhelming force, crushing rebellions before they could begin. Entire species had been exterminated for daring to resist. But now the impossible had happened. The Sol Purge fleet, the largest military force the Council had ever assembled, had been completely annihilated. Not a single ship had returned. The terrifying reality settled in across the galaxy. Humanity had not been conquered. Humanity had conquered the Council's greatest army. And now, humanity was coming for them. The Butcher makes his move. On board the TSS Revenant, Earth's most advanced warship, Supreme Commander Marcus Voss studied the latest battle data with a cold, analytical gaze. He was not a man prone to emotion. His mind functioned like a machine, ruthless in its efficiency. Initiate Operation Scorched Sky. He ordered, his voice like steel. Across dozens of hidden Terran outposts, Earth's fleets activated. The aliens believed that humanity had just begun its war effort. They were wrong. Earth had been preparing for decades. Every human defeat, every loss in galactic diplomacy, had been calculated deception. Terran Black Ops sleeper cells, embedded in enemy worlds for years, now struck at once. On Elteris Prime, the capital of the Elteri Consensus, Earth's agents detonated an artificial singularity, collapsing the planet's core into a black hole. On Vraxis 4, the seat of the Vraxis swarm, an experimental bioweapon tailored to their DNA was released into the atmosphere. Within hours, every Vraxis broodmother was dead. Their species was finished. On Kelleroth Station, the largest warship factory in Council space, Earth's hackers overrode security protocols, turning the station's automated defenses against its own fleet. The orbital shipyards self-destructed, taking 200 capital ships with them. Every strike was precise, merciless, and absolute. The message was clear. The exterminators had become the exterminated. Panic in the Council. In the heart of the Galactic Council chamber, chaos erupted. The surviving Council leaders screamed over one another, demanding explanations, arguing, begging for a way out. High Chancellor Ovrak Thun slammed a clawed fist against the table. This is impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to die. A trembling Elteri admiral, his feathers twitching with fear, whispered the words no one wanted to say. The war is already lost. Silence. Because they all knew the truth. Humanity was not fighting for survival. They were fighting for revenge. And their leader, Supreme Commander Marcus Voss, had just one goal: the complete and total extinction of those who had threatened Earth. The Butcher of the Stars had arrived, and the Galactic Council would soon cease to exist. The Galactic Council's core worlds burned. What had once been symbols of untouchable power, great capitals of the Orion Arm, where laws were written and exterminations decreed, were now smoldering ruins, their skies choked with the ashes of their own arrogance. Humanity had not conquered these worlds. It had erased them. The fall of Tarvalis Prime. Tarvalis Prime, the seat of the Council's power, had stood unchallenged for 10,000 years. A jewel of galactic civilization, its orbit was lined with fortress stations, protected by planetary shields strong enough to withstand supernova-level blasts. No species had ever dared to attack it. But humanity was not like other species. At precisely 3 o'clock Galactic Standard Time, the sky cracked open. A dark cloud emerged from hyperspace. Not ships, but something worse. Artificial asteroids, each the size of a mountain, laced with hyper-dense neutronium cores, moving at half the speed of light. Tarvalis's shields flared, their defense systems activated, scrambling to destroy the incoming bombardment. But there were too many, and the moment the planetary shields flickered from the sheer force of the impacts, the true assault began. From the darkness of space, Terran orbital insertion pods rained down, each carrying a single super soldier, bio-augmented and AI-linked. The sons of Earth had arrived. They hit the ground like meteors, bursting from their drop pods already in motion, weapons locked onto targets before their boots touched the soil. The defenders of Tarvalis fought back with everything they had. It didn't matter. The sons of Earth moved with inhuman speed, their armor absorbing plasma fire, their rail-accelerated weapons firing rounds that punched through buildings, bodies, and vehicles alike. Within 14 hours, the planetary government had been eradicated. The Senate Hall was reduced to glass, its ruling members executed live on every broadcast channel in the galaxy. And standing atop the ruins, staring into the blackened horizon, was Commander Marcus Voss. His voice carried through every communication system, broadcasted in every known language. The Galactic Council declared war on us. They tried to purge us. Now, the purge is ours. Then, without further ceremony, he issued a single command: sterilize the planet. And with that, the bombardment resumed. Tarvalis Prime was cleansed from existence. The purge expands. The fall of Tarvalis was only the beginning. Terran fleets, now unstoppable, surged across the stars. One by one, the great civilizations that had voted for humanity's extinction faced their reckoning. The Seraph Dominion's homeworld was split in two by an experimental gravitic warhead. The Vraxis swarm's queens were incinerated, their hive fleets left leaderless and collapsing into chaos. The Elteri Consensus, who had prided themselves on diplomacy and control, sent an unconditional surrender. It was denied. Humanity was not here for peace. They were here for vengeance. And the purge was far from over. Panic spread across the stars. Entire civilizations that once stood arrogant and untouchable now faced a horror they had never imagined. The Galactic Council, which had held absolute dominance for millennia, had been shattered in weeks. Their fleets were gone, their worlds were crumbling, and their leaders were dead or in hiding. But hiding wouldn't save them, because humanity never forgave, and it never forgot. The slaughter of the last refuge. The remnants of the Council fled to Karsus 4, a once neutral system turned into a desperate last refuge. What remained of their shattered fleets gathered there, forming a last-ditch defensive line. 153 warships, 17 planetary shields, 5 billion people. It wouldn't be enough. The Terran Death Fleet arrived in absolute silence. No broadcasts, no demands, no negotiations, just death. For a moment, the Council dared to hope. Their sensor arrays detected only 12 Terran ships, an insultingly small force compared to their defenses. Surely this was a mistake. Surely they could win one last battle. That hope died in 32 seconds, because those 12 ships were apocalypse engines, planet crackers, star killers, machines built to unmake reality itself. The lead vessel, TEV Imperator, opened fire first, unleashing the Oblivion Lance, a directed energy weapon powered by an artificial singularity. The blast was silent, its effects instantaneous. Half the Council's fleet simply ceased to exist. No wreckage, no explosions, just erased. The remaining ships tried to retreat, their admirals screaming for mercy. They begged for negotiations, surrender, anything. Their pleas were met with a single transmission from Supreme Commander Marcus Voss. No survivors. The Hellfire Protocol was enacted. Karsus 4 was reduced to a molten wasteland. Its atmosphere was stripped away, its oceans boiled into steam, its continents cracked open by planet-buster warheads. The Council had hoped to regroup here. Instead, they died here. Every last one. The last vote. Deep beneath the ruins of Tarvalis Prime, in a hidden bunker, the final surviving members of the Galactic Council held one last meeting. It was a farce. There were no grand speeches, no political maneuvering, no arguments. There was only fear. The vote was simple. Should humanity be offered complete galactic surrender? The vote was unanimous. They sent their message, and they waited. But when the response came, it was not the acceptance they had hoped for. A single transmission, broadcast across every surviving star system, sent from Earth itself. You don't get to surrender. You get to die. Just like you planned for us. The final purge had begun, and there would be no stopping it. The galaxy had no more armies, no more fleets, no more hope. All that remained were fragments, scattered survivors, broken civilizations, and the remnants of a once mighty empire that had sought to wipe out humanity. But now, humanity was wiping out them. One by one, the last strongholds of the Galactic Council fell, each world marked for eradication. The purge was almost complete, and now the final targets had been identified. The hunt for the last counselors. Across the remains of the Council's shattered empire, 6 names remained on Earth's kill list. The last high-ranking officials, the ones who had signed humanity's death order, who had given the command for Earth's extermination fleet. They had fled. They had hidden. It didn't matter. Humanity's hunters, the Nightborn, elite cybernetic assassins grown in dark labs beneath Luna, were already tracking them down. The first fell on the storm-racked world of Jura-Kull, a gas-giant moon turned fortress. Councillor Vexiolon of the Zavani Imperium had fortified himself inside a mountain bunker, believing it impenetrable. The Nightborn walked through the walls. Stealth systems rendered them invisible to sensors. Neural disruptors froze guards in place mid-stride. They entered the Councillor's chamber without firing a shot. He had time to whisper one word, "Please," before his skull was opened with a monomolecular blade. The second fell in a deep space station in the void between galaxies. The third on a nameless rogue planet, where he had thought no one could ever find him. The fourth and fifth died together, betrayed by their own desperate bodyguards. And the last, Councillor Tarvan Orlos, Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Council, the one who had first spoken the words, "Humanity must be purged." He had fled to a secret Dyson sphere, a hidden paradise world, its location erased from every star map, shielded by the most advanced stealth technology ever developed. He had vanished from history, but Earth had found him anyway, because there was nowhere left to run. The execution. When the TEV Nemesis arrived at the Dyson sphere, the defenses activated immediately. Planetary shields, automated warships, fortress cannons. It didn't matter. Humanity's war machine was beyond anything the Council had ever imagined. The Nemesis was one ship, but one ship was all that was needed. A single Godspear warhead was fired, an antimatter payload encased in a quantum destabilization field. The moment it hit, reality itself ripped apart. The Dyson sphere collapsed in on itself, consumed in a silent explosion that sent a shockwave rippling across the void. Councillor Tarvan Orlos was unmade. The last voice of the Council had been silenced, and with that, the Galactic Council was no more. The galaxy trembles. Across the stars, the message was clear. The purge is complete. Humanity had won. And now, they would decide what came next. The war was over. The Galactic Council no longer existed. Their fleets were gone, their armies reduced to dust, their rulers hunted down and executed. And yet, the galaxy still stood. Millions of worlds remained, fractured, leaderless, terrified. Species that had once thrived under the Council's rule now faced an uncertain future. Some prayed for mercy, others prepared for the worst, because humanity still remained. And now, they were the only power left. The final broadcast. On Earth, inside the massive command complex known as the Cradle, Supreme Commander Marcus Voss stood before a single camera. His image was broadcast to every surviving world, every species, every system. This was not a speech of peace. This was a declaration. You tried to exterminate us. You failed. Now, the galaxy belongs to humanity. Your leaders are gone. Your fleets are dust. Your empires are ruins. The only law that remains is the law of Earth. We do not seek your surrender. We do not seek your obedience. We seek only justice, and justice demands balance. You took billions of human lives. Now, an equal number of your own will be erased in return. Panic spread across the galaxy. This was not a ceasefire. This was not a negotiation. This was mathematics. For every human that had been killed in the war, an alien life would be forfeit. And humanity had the power to do it. The reshaping of the stars. The execution fleets were launched. Genetic archives were accessed. Records of every species that had voted for humanity's extermination were compiled. Their populations were counted. Their governments were dissolved. On some worlds, the response was immediate surrender, species kneeling before humanity, offering their worlds, their resources, even themselves. Others resisted. They were burned from history. But humanity was not indiscriminate. They did not simply kill for the sake of killing. The purge was calculated, precise. It ended exactly when the number had been met. Not one more, not one less. And then, humanity stopped. The war was finished. The balance had been restored. The age of humanity. From the ashes of the old order, a new empire was forged. Not an empire of conquest, an empire of law. The Terran dominion was declared, and from its throne on Earth, humanity dictated the new rules of the galaxy. No species would ever again be allowed to threaten another with extermination. No empire would ever again rise to dominate the weak. No council would ever again play God. The stars belonged to all, but humanity would watch over them. And if any dared to break the peace, the purge would come again. And this time, there would be no survivors.